Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the fascinating and honestly highly complex worldview of clinical psychologist and author Dr. Laura Sanger. Through her books, like The Roots of the Federal Reserve and Generation Hoodwinked, she's built this incredibly intricate framework. It's a theory that attempts to bridge ancient theology, global finance, and, believe it or not, even quantum physics into one massive unified theory. So our goal today is to map out this interconnected web. We're going to rely entirely on her published research and public addresses to understand exactly how she links the days of antiquity to our modern reality. It's a vast perspective, so let's just get right into it. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start off with the Ancient Nephilim Agenda. Then we'll look at the Federal Reserve's roots. From there, we're exploring warfare through sound frequencies, moving into humans as transdimensional beings, and finally, we'll wrap up with the spiritual counteroffensive. I mean, it's a totally bizarre intersection of topics, right? On the surface, what could ancient biblical giants possibly have to do with the physical US dollar in your wallet or the exact mathematical tuning of the songs you stream on your phone? Well, according to Dr. Sanger, these vastly different elements aren't random at all. They're actually connected by a hidden, overarching agenda that's been operating in the shadows for millennia. And she argues that understanding this thread is literally the only way to truly comprehend the systems governing our world today. All right, Section 1, the Ancient Nephilim Agenda. This is really the foundational theological premise for her entire worldview. So, the theory posits that the Nephilim were this ancient hybrid race from the days of Noah. Sanger draws heavily from Genesis 6 and the Book of Enoch, arguing that fallen sons of God, or Watchers, descended on Mount Hermon, seized human women, and defiled the human genome to create a hybrid race of giants. But, and this is key, Sanger's thesis doesn't leave these monsters back in antiquity. She argues that today, this exact same destructive agenda is being carried out by what she calls Nephilim hosts. Now, these aren't literal giants walking down the street. Rather, they're modern human beings, titans of global governance, banking, and media who have allegedly partnered with dark forces. Their goal? To strip humanity of the image of God and enslave the masses through control and intimidation. And Sanger traces the scope of this alleged threat all the way back to the 1776 founding of the Illuminati by Adam Weishaupt. She notes that Weishaupt partnered with the Rothschild banking dynasty to form this master plan for absolute world domination. Just look at their 7 proposed goals. They're absolutely sweeping, ranging from abolishing private property and national governments to destroying the family unit, eliminating inheritance, and even eradicating Christianity itself, all to establish a one-world government. Sanger views the modern globalist agenda as a direct, unbroken continuation of this exact Nephilim blueprint, just playing out over centuries. Moving on to Section 2, the Federal Reserve's roots. Here, Sanger transitions her focus away from ancient theology and straight into the realm of macroeconomics. In her book, The Roots of the Federal Reserve, she argues that the creation of the central banking system was not just some dry financial policy shift. Actually, it was a calculated spiritual maneuver. She traces this back to that infamous 1910 secret meeting on Jekyll Island, where powerful bankers convened under the cover of darkness and strict anonymity to draft what would eventually become the 1913 Federal Reserve Act. According to Sanger, this wasn't just economics. It was an institution established by modern Nephilim hosts to literally defile the financial gates of the country. By replacing sovereign wealth with a debt-based currency, she claims the ultimate goal was to keep everyday people locked in a perpetual state of financial slavery. Next up, Section 3, Warfare Through Sound Frequencies. This is where her theory extends beyond money and directly into the invisible sound waves of the music we listen to every single day. Sanger points to a very specific historical timeline to argue that standard musical tuning was intentionally weaponized. Why? To manipulate herd behavior just prior to World War II. Think about it. Up until the late 19th century, the Vienna Conference had set the standard tuning for the musical note A to 435 Hz. But Sanger highlights that in the 1930s, the Rockefeller and Rothschild alliances began funding research into sound manipulation and psychotronic warfare, essentially using energy and sound waves to secretly influence the human mind and nervous system. Then, in 1939, spearheaded by Nazi propagandist Joseph Goebbels, a conference in London officially pushed the worldwide tuning standard up to 440 Hz. So Sanger draws this sharp, deeply consequential contrast between 440 Hz and higher frequencies. She actually cites studies arguing that 440 Hz is a fundamentally destructive frequency. For example, one study she references exposed water fleas to 440 Hz, and it resulted in decreased heart rates, infertility, and eventually the death of the fleas. In human studies, it was linked to increased negative moods, particularly in men. But in stark contrast, if you tune an instrument slightly higher to 444 Hz, it releases what are known as the solfeggio tones. This is an ancient, sacred musical scale. It includes 528 Hz, which Sanger calls the miracle tone. She claims this life-giving frequency vibrates in harmony with chlorophyll in nature and is even actively used by scientists to facilitate DNA repair. To back up her claims that sound acts as a physical, world-altering tool, she categorizes biblical events where specific sounds functioned as literal portals for direct divine intervention. Take Gideon blowing his trumpet, for instance. Sanger argues the sound itself wasn't magic, but it acted as a transdimensional conduit for the Spirit of the Lord to unleash heavenly manifestations right here in the physical world. Similarly, when David heard the sound of marching in the tops of the mulberry trees, that was a sound portal signaling the arrival of God's armies. In her framework, sound is literally the bridge between the physical and spiritual realms. Okay, Section 4, Humans as Transdimensional Beings. Let's look at how quantum mechanics directly intersects with this spiritual theology. Remember Light's wave-particle duality from physics class? Well, Sanger suggests that human consciousness and intention operate the exact same way. Just as light can exhibit characteristics of both a particle and a wave at the same time, you, being created in the image of a divine light, have a soul and spirit capable of transcending conventional limitations. According to her theory, when properly aligned with the Holy Spirit, a human being isn't just a physical body bound by time. You're actually a transdimensional entity capable of operating completely outside the boundaries of a linear timeline. And she points to actual delayed choice quantum physics experiments to back this up. In these incredibly complex tests, a particle's behavior actually seems to change based on an observer's intention, even after it has passed a checkpoint. It completely challenges our basic, everyday concepts of cause and effect. She takes this straight into the spiritual realm, citing this fascinating study where intercessory prayer made in the year 2000 positively affected the recovery rates of patients hospitalized for sepsis all the way back in the mid-1990s. She argues that because of our wave-like nature, our aligned souls can retroactively influence the past and actively shape future events across the entire spectrum of time. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the spiritual counteroffensive. With all these massive, global, unseen forces allegedly at play, what is her proposed strategy to fight back? Well, Sanger isn't just presenting a grand conspiracy. She's outlining a very tactical, actionable response for individuals to reclaim their spiritual authority. Step 1 is highly personal, cultivating undistracted, intimate, silent time with Jesus. It's about tuning your ear to the sound of God's voice and actively avoiding the trap of just looking for religious formulas. Step 2 is corporate, performing physical ground strikes. These are organized gatherings in strategic geographic locations, and they're meant to dismantle dark principalities embedded in the actual soil. Participants travel to sites of historical trauma or occult significance to literally reclaim the land spiritually. Finally, her theory places a heavy emphasis on participating in forward baptism. Now, this isn't about repenting for past sins. It's about deliberately stepping into a prophetic destiny. For example, during a massive conference in Texas, participants practically applied this concept. They gathered to metaphorically bury historical curses embedded in the land, things like the trauma of the JFK assassination or local Masonic influences, and they forcefully broke agreements with the enemy. By being baptized forward, they were moving directly into what they define as the seed of Abraham, seeking a prophetic future characterized by health, wealth, and cultural influence. Ultimately, Dr. Sanger's worldview leaves us questioning the hidden architecture of our modern world. From the origins of the Federal Reserve to the actual frequency of the music on our playlists, her work asks us to look past the surface of everything we consume. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. As we wrap up, her intricate theory leaves us with one absolutely provocative thought. What unseen forces are silently shaping the reality you experience every single day? And what power might you hold to shape them back?